Hi, my name is Olivia Cleland and I'm from Actual Impact, and this video today is all about the GROW model, and hopefully it will help you become more familiar with the structure of the model and what each of the parts of the model mean. So first of all, let's think about a coaching conversation. So what really makes a coaching conversation different from any other normal conversation that you maybe would have with somebody about their performance or their career goals or even their health and well-being? Well, there are lots of different reasons, but one reason in particular that always stands out for me is that coaching is a structured conversation. So it takes somebody from one place and very deliberately brings them to another place. So we might be having lots of kind of coach-like conversations already, and it might already be in your nature to ask lots of questions and be really curious. But those conversations sometimes they can be very circular, and there is sometimes not an awful lot of forward momentum, or sometimes the person is just really stuck in their issue and it's really difficult to understand how you can help to move them forward, and coaching can help do that. So do you find that people come to you because you're a really good listener or you're really empathetic, but actually it's the same conversation over and over again? And I would urge you to think, like, how is this actually helping the person that you're communicating with? And the other piece is, how does this actually impact on your energy? Does this give you energy, or do you feel a little bit drained afterwards? So a professional coach will always use some kind of framework of or a model to help whoever they're coaching get really clear on, first of all, what they want, second of all, what they have now, thirdly, potentially what is possible for them, and finally, what solutions can be achieved or actions can be taken. So one of these models is the GROW model, which was developed in the 80s by Sir John Whitmore, Alan Fine and Graham Alexander, who were all business coaches at the time, and they came together and developed this model for coaching in business on performance. And they often refer back to Tim Galway, who wrote The Inner Game, which is a useful book to read as like an inspiration for the model. And some of them brought their experience from the world of sport into the corporate world, really helping people to visualize and to explore their feelings and to try and understand their motivations and their drivers. So the premise behind GOAL is that if people explore their own thoughts and their ideas and emotions and motivations, the outcome of whatever they're exploring and whatever they want to achieve is more likely to stick. Okay, so it's all about, I suppose, finding the emotional leverage with people. The idea is that we can help other people, so coaches, thinkers, or however you want to term them, by helping them explore their ideas, emotions, feelings, motivations, values, etc. through open questions. Okay, so it's not about us telling them about our story, it's about finding out what their story is, and even them finding out for themselves what their story is. Okay. It means that our opinion as the provider of the coach-like questions, our thoughts, our drivers, our motivations are pretty irrelevant in that relationship. So our job as a coach or coaching manager, leader, is to use this framework to help other people get curious about what is happening with them. And therefore, we obviously need to be really curious too. People often, have more choice now in what is possible for them. Most people have freedom of choice, but find it so difficult actually to take action. So how come? It may be really, really useful to watch Sir John Whitmore's video, Cleverly Connected, on YouTube, about education, how we develop or don't develop young people to build sort of wisdom and understand how to connect choice and consequence. And I would recommend definitely that you watch that. And it might give you some clues as to why coaching is so important for people and their independent thinking, taking responsibility and ownership for their own choices, which is really what we're trying to do as coaches. So let's look at the GROW model itself. It's made up of 4 parts. And if we look at the model in kind of a linear fashion initially, the first stage is the goal setting stage. So we're assuming here that the individual wants to or needs to identify a goal. This is what the model is saying. So before that stage, there may be some discussion around a theme or topic area. And because the first part is goal, we're assuming they want to have a goal or want to think about a goal or discuss a goal. So I find that this can be really challenging for individuals, as people can often be pretty crystal clear about what they don't want. But whenever because what they don't want is where they're in some kind of pain or difficulty, or it's too challenging. So I love helping people really identify and get clear on what they really do want. And what I'm trying to do when I'm exploring goal with the individual is enabling that person to verbalize their goal in some way, and do so always in a positive. So instead of I don't want to feel or do this anymore, it's more I will do this. I really want to do this. My ideal is this. Sometimes I find that people work really well in kind of a metaphorical world. So when, identifying their goals, and if I hear people who are talking in metaphors, and it can be very, very subtle because we're so used to them, they're built kind of into our language, then I like to really use those and build on those a little bit. So I might ask a goal-based kind of question, like if this goal was a picture, what would it look like? If this goal was a colour or a shape, what would that look like? Or if it was a step on a ladder, where are you right now with that goal? So visualization for people is a really important part of, really getting clear on the goal. And there's more likely, if there's some kind of visual or metaphor for the goal, that people can link emotionally to it. And you'll know that there's an emotional link to the goal for the individual, because they'll probably display it verbally. Obviously they'll tell you, but also through their body language. So imagine this from your own perspective. You've identified a really exciting goal that gets you into a fantastic place, either emotionally, physically, or whatever. You're seeing what you want. You're really clear on seeing what you want. It's a positive place. And if you can have a metaphor or a visual attached to that, even better. For me, recently, I had a coaching session with somebody who had quite low self-worth and a pretty negative body image. Actually, they were very critical of themselves, and it was really affecting them because they were attending lots of networking events and speaking events, which was in turn impacting on how visible they were in terms of their business. And they stated to me that their goal was that they wanted to look thinner. Okay, they wanted to be thinner. They wanted not to be fat anymore, actually was the words. And they wanted to not look unprofessional. Okay, so I asked them some questions about what did they actually want instead. If they could flip that over, what would it be, and what would that actually give them? And they became very emotional during the conversation, because it was causing them some emotional pain, and they expressed even some feelings of shame about their body, which is, these are strong emotions coming through, and nothing to do with shame is very challenging. So I asked them to think about, what they would like to feel when they saw themselves? So what would you like to feel? So we're not talking about losing weight or getting thinner or anything like that. We're actually coming away from that. We're now trying to get to a place of what would you actually like to feel? What would they rather have than where they are now? How could they phrase it in the most positive way? And the coachee finally clarified that they wanted to feel physically strong and emotionally resilient. They wanted to exude like really good energy, physical energy, positive energy, and they wanted their body to reflect that. So this goal of how they wanted them to feel helped them to get clearer on how they would actually get there. So this was a shift between how they wanted to look to what they wanted to feel. No discussion, as I said, about weight loss or numbers on a scale or clothes size or measurements. The goal was rooted in a feeling and a positive visual. Okay. I find it takes courage to stay in the goal and allow the individual the luxury and time to really fully explore the goal fully. Often as leaders and managers, we find it suits us to help people move quickly to solutions and actions. This is where we normally add values. This is where we try to get people. My advice is, as a coach, we are shifting our role. And our role there, when we're using the GROW model and focusing on goal, is to give the time to actually ensure that it's the right goal. The right goal has been identified. So at times we might need to revisit the goal throughout the coaching conversation. I've done it 3 or 4 times. So what's the goal now? This is a good thing. The goal could change in the conversation. That's fine. So the next part of the model is reality. And this is about exploring what is happening now with the individual. However, remember, reality may not be now. It may be already in the past. So you'll be asking the coachee about something that's actually already happened. It's important to remember that the person's reality is present for them, even though it might be in the past. It can be very emotional for them. So we have to be careful as coaches in terms of judging people about why they are feeling what they're feeling and what their reality is. We have to be super heightened to our own prejudices and our own biases, conscious or unconscious biases, to be fully present for the individual. And this takes practice often. And also about reality, I find that you have to really pay attention to what is happening physically with the individual. Is this a happy place for them to talk about, or is it really difficult? Does it pull them back into a place of feeling stuck and sad or miserable even? And if so, you as the coach, this is where the experience and skill comes in. You as the coach need to make the call. Is it useful to stay here in reality, or would it be more useful for me to support the person to move forward into a more positive frame of mind? And sometimes we just have to ask the coachee, how useful is it to stay in this area of reality for you? It is also important to remember that the reality that the individual is verbalizing to you might be distorted in some kind of way. So it's our job as coaches to get some facts going, some evidence. And that might kind of change the perspective of the reality for the individual. So we want to help the coachee move forward and not dwell too long on the past. So I often, propel people forward into reality, forward out of reality into their goal or into that options piece, which is the next part of the model. And this is where we get to work really creatively as a coach, and help the coachee to be really creative. So really thinking about all the options that are possible for them. And it's usually a happy spot for them to be in. There's no space in this part of the model for negativity. or any judgment. So if you find you're doing that, you need to be aware of that. And there need to be some changes that come about to make this a really positive place for the coachee. Unless, of course, this is always the thing with coaching, we're thinking of ethics here. If the coachee is identifying something that would be harmful to them, potentially illegal, then there would have to be a different conversation would have to happen at that stage. You would move out of coaching and into kind of another place for the coachee. So the option stage is all about exploration and exploring from as many perspectives as possible. We want people that we're coaching to feel that they have loads of choice. So the other thing I do as well is I think it's useful to help the coachee to prioritize all their choices and options, maybe in terms of what will have the biggest impact or timing for them, or quick wins to build confidence maybe. So it's important to really challenge the coachee here, especially if they feel like there's no obvious solution. And it can really help your skill as a coach to really help support that person to be accountable for their own solutions. If there's no options at all, it might be useful to go back and revisit the goal. However, most people will have some kind of obvious solutions already in mind. Well, they might seem obvious to you, it might not be obvious to them, but they've maybe never said, the possible choices that they have out loud, or communicated them with anyone else, or put them into some kind of framework before. So you can really add value here. It's not about you offering ideas or solutions, but supporting the coachee to do this for themselves. So take time to explore. I would say, don't always accept the first 1, 2, 3 options, because they're usually the ones that kind of roll off the top of the head. Push and challenge the coachee to go further. You might have to say to them, can I challenge you to go further? Do you have permission to do that? Most coachees will go with it. So the other thing is, I always like to make sure I'm connecting the possible options or choice back to the goal, keeping the coachee in their happy place. Okay. So when the coachee has some clear options possible, it's about moving them forwards into committing to an action. This is about the individual taking ownership and responsibility for their solutions. And really, this is the most selfless thing you can do for somebody, because it actually really supports individuals to build confidence in their own capability. We can tell people they're brilliant and they're doing a great job, and that's lovely to hear. But in actual fact, this is the way we help to build individual self-esteem. It's by helping them recognize and learn for themselves of what their own capabilities are. If you have provided ideas or solutions or actions, you've moved out of coaching. Okay, you've gone into something else. That's okay, but our job in this is all about coaching. It's all about the other individual having full accountability. The action stage is also about, specific action. Okay, how will you do this? What's the first step? What's the most impactful step? Who can support you? And I think it's useful to help people get into timescales with this GROW model. However, sometimes the coachee's action may be more about, considering an area or thinking about an area, and an actual tangible action might not be possible at this moment, but that can be revised and come back to you at some stage. It's really about what the coachee needs. And our job as the coach is to be fully supportive of that individual's decision. Other people in their lives may not be very supportive, and that's what's keeping them back. We as the coachee have a responsibility to really support the individual's thinking. Okay, so you may want to help the coachee to move to a place where they summarize, their goals and their options and their actions. And this really helps to cement the thinking and the ideas and the possibilities and the actions in the coachee's mind. So we, throughout the conversation, may do some summary and reflection, but it's great for the coachee really to be able to sum that up at the end. And there is an opportunity at the end also to act and have some kind of contract around accountability with the coachee. So how can I help you? How can I help you to be accountable for the actions you've identified? And then finally, what I really like to do in this goal model is actually bring the actions back to the goal. So how will doing this action bring you closer to your goal? And again, leaves the coachee in a really happy place, having that sense of control. So the process of coaching using Grow should ultimately be a positive one. We are shifting the coachee from a place of maybe feeling stuck, and as a result of that feeling anxious or stressed or irritated or frustrated, to a place where they have choice, optimism, feeling in control, creative, potentially happier, and performing to a better level as well. This process is simple. It works really well. It's not complex or difficult. And on the surface of it, it might look like sort of minimal effort because it seems obviously quite intuitive. However, it's the skill that you bring to this process which has an impact. And that skill requires continuous development and feedback. And the development of coaching skills, it's an ongoing learning process. So enjoy the journey.